Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of She Talks Business. I am really excited to introduce you to today's guest. Today's guest is Ed Tate, and he is probably one of the best speakers I've ever seen speak. So let me just tell you a little bit about him. He is an award-winning international keynote speaker, author, and executive. And trust me, you don't want to go up on stage and speak after him. I've had to do it. Worldwide, he is known as the speaker who energizes, educates, and entertains. To date, he has spoken professionally in 50 states, 25 countries, and on 5 continents. He won the American Idol of Public Speaking, becoming the 2000 World Champion of Public Speakings for Toastmasters International, which is Toastmasters International's most prestigious speaking award among its 352,000 plus global members. In 2008, Ed earned his certified speaking professional designation by the National Speakers Association. It is an honor bestowed on slightly more than 12% of its members, not bestowed on me. Some of Ed's clients include GlaxoSmithKline, Dell, General Motors, Hallmark Cards, Nestle, and Verizon, and his success in business has spanned more than 2 decades. For 14 years, he was a successful national account executive, selling over 500 million in products and services to corporations and entrepreneurs throughout the United States. And he co-created 2 business units that produced, get this, over 1.25 billion in revenue. Since 1998, Ed has helped corporations, entrepreneurs, speakers, and salespeople win high stakes presentations. Ed, welcome.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. So, Lisa, before I begin, I just want to say something, and that is this. There is no winning the comparison game. So the fact that you followed me afterwards is, there's a person that you and I both work with, Alan Weiss, and he has his aphorism. He says, there's always someone who's got a bigger boat, and the only fair comparison is where we started to where we started and to where we are today. So,
oh, that is so easy for you to say when you get up there and you just like ooze talent on stage. And then, somebody like me who speaks a handful of times a year, who hasn't probably spoken 50 times, let alone in 50 states, has to get up and follow you. So thank you. Thank you so much for that support.
And that being said, that time you got up and spoke, it landed with me to the point where I'm one of your clients today. So
there you go.
Like I said, there's no winning to the comparison game. So the only fair comparison is is comparing you to you.
Yes. Well, you are an exceptional speaker and an exceptional storyteller. And, I have a lot of respect for what you do. So why don't you tell our audience, our listeners, a little bit about what exactly is high stakes presentations? How do you help people with speaking for high stakes presentations? High stakes to me sounds like, hostage negotiations. So tell us a little bit about that.
I used to work for IBM Corporation a long time ago. And one day I had this aha. My talent, my gift, if you will, is we had like a win or go home type of opportunity. So we were competing against another company, and there was a committee, and you got this one opportunity, you got this one shot to win the business or go home. And it occurred to me that I'm really good at this. I mean, there were times when, yes, IBM is a well-known company, well-known corporation, but many times our competitors had a significantly better solution than we did. So just because we walked in there with those 3 letters didn't mean that we're necessarily going to win the business. And one of the things I try to do is I try to make it an experience as opposed to the traditional pitch, if you will. Mm-hmm. And the traditional pitch was you had a proposal that was 300 pages. You had 300 or 400 slides, etc. It was like ad nauseum. And the thing I tried to do is put myself in the shoes of the committee. And what do they need to know? How can I talk in layman's terms, not in in terms of technology? And how can we make this a fun, memorable experience? Well, that's what winning high stakes presentations is all about. So, for example, recently I had a client. Her name is Bonnie, and Bonnie was, for lack of a better word, in layman's terms, She is presenting to this committee, and it was basically a way of reducing carbon in this particular community, basically
Mhm.
liquefying carbon. That's as technical as I'm going to get with this. Anyway, she's competing against 8 other organizations, etc. She won this particular opportunity. It was $1 million opportunity, and then she actually won a follow-up deal for $2 million. And one of the things that she did is, again, she put herself in the shoes of the committee. She was able to, this is rare, but she was able to watch the others compete. And she adjusted her presentation based on what she saw. She observed what the committee liked and what they didn't like. And she changed her presentation on the fly. And she said, one of the things she said she's never ever done is she said to them, this is why this is important to me. I feel that this is important to this particular community. I feel that what we're doing not only will help this committee, but it'll also help eventually the world at large. And the other thing is she focused on one of my techniques is focusing on connecting with an audience as opposed to your content. I feel connection is more important than your content. Now, I realize that sounds like heresy to some people. However, if you don't connect with the audience, they're going to miss your brilliant content. So it is
Mhm.
critical that you connect first. So that's what we worked on in that particular opportunity. So basically, it's a winner go home type of presentation. And that's what I help. And with
But
your
it's
help, you've helped me define who my best fit customer and client is. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily salespeople. It's what I call non they're they're non-salespeople and they're technical professionals. And thank you for helping me clarify who that is.
So speaking to me, presentation speaking, keynote speaking, it's just, it's another style of communication. And in
True.
order for you to communicate your message in an effective way, you have to be talented at doing that in some way. So you talk about connection.
Hmm.
How, what are some things that you recommend your clients do to form that connection with the audience?
This is a tip I got from you. Okay. Do some form of homework or background. Check out their Facebook, check out their social media, etc. You never want to go into a presentation cold, because if you go in a presentation cold, you're not going to make that connection. So, for example, recently I just did a presentation for a government organization just last week, and they've rehired me 3 times just this year alone. Well, when I initially connect, worked with this particular organization. There's a guy by the name of Todd. I did some homework, and I found that Todd used to work in TV. He used to be a news anchor. Guess what? A long time ago, I used to be a news anchor. He used to be a disc jockey on radio. Guess what? I used to be a disc jockey on radio. So the first time I get together with Todd, I says, Todd, I always do some homework before I get together with someone, and I've discovered some things about you. Are you curious as to what I found? Now, we did a Zoom call. You should have seen the look on his face. This is like, no, no, it's nothing bad, nothing bad. Okay. And he laughed and joked, and I talked about my experience being a news anchor and my experience being a disc jockey, and we had this immediate connection right away. I mean, it was like we were old buddies, we were old pals, and that was one of the fastest deals I've closed in
Mhm.
recent memory. So that's what I
So
mean by making that initial connection.
I would assume that that goes a long ways towards also building your confidence in terms of how you present. Because when you do your research and you get to know your audience a little bit better, then they don't seem like, faceless, nameless people that you don't know anything about. So they're a little bit less intimidating. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. So, for example, there was this vice president with Johnson and Johnson, and I discovered her on LinkedIn, and I knew I was a good fit for them. And we had zero connection. But one thing I discovered about her, she was an alum of Penn State. Absolutely loved Penn State, posted Penn State, etc. I had spoken at Penn State. I actually had a lot, they had given me a bunch of Penn State swag. So this is what I decided to do. I'm a University of Illinois graduate. We are competitors. Okay, we're part of the Big Ten, and Penn State usually kicks our butt. But anyway, so I decided to pack all this Penn State swag. I put it in a box. I sent it to her in FedEx, and I said, I'm a member of the University of Illinois. I said, like, if I put on this stuff, I would probably break out in hives. You probably have a better use for it. Anyway, I contacted her a week later. She was actually in a meeting. When she found out who it was, she stopped the meeting and she took my call. And we did like north of $100,000 worth of business. So when you can find that connection, you're no
Mm-hmm.
longer a stranger. You're a friend. And literally, I mean, she started the conversation with, it's just like, well, if I were to wear University of Illinois stuff, I would break out in hives. I mean, that's how this is our very, very first conversation. And we started off like we were friends. So the
Mm-hmm.
thing that one of the best things you can do is do your homework, do your research, and see what's that connection you can make.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you say that. I've never really thought about doing that when I think about, prospects, clients, leads. But you said something to me last year that really uh, resonated, landed in on me in a deep way. And you probably don't even realize that you said it. But you lost a dear friend, and I sent you and your family a gift
Oh,
basket.
yeah.
And I just wanted to do something nice for you because I knew that you were grieving. And when you thanked me, you said you brought joy back into our home. Thank you for doing that. And to me, I would have never described what I did as bringing joy into someone's life. And I think that what you just described in terms of sending the swag to this woman, you brought an unexpected moment of joy and
Hmm.
humor into her life too. And that is just such a powerful thing when it comes to building connection.
You just reminded me of two things. First of all, I want to thank you for that because, I mean, just right now, frankly, I just literally brought a tear to my eye. Thank you again. What you did was so nice. It was so unexpected, and that gift basket, it sat on our. We have an island, this huge island, etc., and we put it in the center. So every time we walk in a house, we would see that, and it would just bring joy, and not only to me but to my wife. And my wife knew how hard I had taken the death of that individual.
Mhm.
But one of the things I try to do is I try to bring a smile to people's faces. This is an aside. You know, I've had numerous times when I have my flight's been canceled and I had to reschedule a flight. And airlines are under no obligations whatsoever other than to putting you on the other another flight. In this case, it was a It was a Friday night in Chicago. Last flight, you got to spend the night in Chicago. I'm in line with 250 other people. There's a Starbucks to my left. I overhear one of the ladies say, "Oh man, Starbucks is about to close." I really wanted the coffee. I heard opportunity. So make a deal with the person back of me. Says, "Hey, I'll buy you a Starbucks if you hold my place in line." It's my turn in line. I hand both of the ladies a Starbucks, and they have a smile on their face. And my only goal here was to put a smile on their face, just to see if I could put a smile on their face. And one of the ladies says, "Well," and then she figured out it was that awkward moment when she figured out what I was up to. And she said, "Okay, what do you want?" And I says, "Well, since you asked, I would like a hotel room, a dinner coupon, transportation from the airport to the hotel, a breakfast coupon, transportation back to the airport, and well, since you asked, I'd like to have first class upgrade as well." And they both started laughing. I mean, hysterically. And then finally, one of them whispers to me and says, "Don't say anything." And she slides me an envelope. What did I get, Lisa?
First class tickets, everything you
I get
asked for.
I got everything. Now, that's happened to me numerous times with airlines I have no clout with whatsoever. But my goal was never ever to get a first class upgrade. My
Right.
goal was always to see if I could put a smile on their face. So thank you
Well,
for saying that.
it's the law of reciprocity. When you give, you get back. And I
Absolutely.
think that, you when you give without expectations, you typically get back way more than what you expect. It may not be from that person, but in some way, in some manner, I really do believe in that. I believe that when you put
Absolutely.
good out in the world. So
Yeah.
talk to me about who should hire a speaking coach, because there is a stat somewhere on the interwebs, so it must be true, that the public speaking ranks higher than dying in terms of people's greatest fears. So when should people engage someone like you to help them learn how to be a better speaker and presenter? Because
So
I
there's,
think every
Mhm.
presentation is high stakes. Every presentation doesn't necessarily have $1 million price tag on it. I think that, when I go on stage and I just speak and I talk about marketing, it's high stakes because I want to make a positive impact. So talk to us a little bit about when people should engage in a speaker coach.
Okay. Um, so
My dog was
when they
hiccuping,
should
sorry.
engage in terms of a speaker coach is, well, let me talk about let's see, an engineering firm out of Chicago had the CEO of this company, and he was trying to sell something called a starter pack. And that is, he would pitch this starter pack. It costs like anywhere from $25,000 to $75,000. And the purpose there was to get his company to do some type of engineering for a different firm. And he would pitch this in front of CEOs. Well, they didn't have success time after time after time. In some instances, he actually had to pay to speak in front of these particular audiences. Well, after he worked with me, he was able to. He told me they actually sold about $500,000 worth of these starter packs, and he says that's not the big thing. He says the big thing was that led to multi-million-dollar contracts for them. So when should you engage a speaking coach? When there is a high stakes, when there is something that is important for you, that you really want to do well. When you need to do something called seeding.
Mhm.
Seeding it's not hard selling. Seeding is planting seeds in a presentation, and it's making the audience think, well, I want something like that. How do I do that? So for example, I've given you example after example after example of clients I've worked with who've put results. That's an example of seeding. I'm planting seeds because I've actually produced this result. And anyone who watches this podcast or who listens to this podcast, they may say to themselves, hey, I need help in that specific area. The other area is if you've tried something before, if you've done it, if you've done what I call a DIY. Lisa, are you a DIYer in some areas of your life? That is,
Sure.
you do it yourself. And have you ever had a situation where DIY goes BAD? Have you ever had that situation?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So like, for example, for me, when I used to live in Denver and I tried to fix my own sprinkler system. I'm not going to tell you the whole story other than the fact that the police, the fire department, and an ambulance was called. Okay. So that's I am terrible when it comes to fixing sprinkler systems. And that's when I needed a coach in that particular area. And I actually hired a person who actually fixed my sprinkler system. And there was no loss of life, if you will. But if you need help in a specific area, if you want to really, really do well, if there's certain outcomes that you want, it could be not necessarily selling $1 million, but maybe having a customer or client talk to you, or
Mhm.
like the engineering firm out of Chicago, having conversations about how they can work together. If there's some type of outcome or some type of result you want to have after your talk, then that's when you should engage a coach like myself or somebody else.
Right. Presentations influence outcomes. And if you're not getting the outcomes that you want from your presentation, then you should get somebody who knows how to help you get better outcomes. I would
Exactly.
absolutely agree with that. So speaking of getting help, you and I, we both are in the coaching space. So you coach people on, being better presenters so they can get the outcomes that they want from their presentations. And I coach and guide people on marketing and business development and business growth. Talk to me a little bit about your philosophy on coaching, because you and I have worked together for a few years, and I know that you have worked with other coaches before. And one of the things that I want people to understand when they listen to this season, when I'm talking to a lot of my clients, is what are some of the considerations that you have when deciding on a business coach or deciding to invest in coaching, regardless of whether it's business or not, what are some of the things you think about that people should be thinking about for themselves?
Number one, I've been in business myself for 22 years. And one of the things I look at, I ask myself the question, where do I want to make a quantum leap? Where do I want to make accelerated progress? And I know that there's certain things that I don't know. And if I try to do them on my own, it'll take me twice as long, three times as long, or I may be going completely in the wrong direction. So I need some type of guidance. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Example number one is I began my speaking career in the year 2000. I won the World Championship of Public Speaking. My career took off. A year later, in America, we had 9/11. And all of a sudden, all my speaking engagements get canceled. I had never faced circumstances like this before. And I said to myself, I need someone who's smarter than me. And in that point in time, I hired Alan Weiss, who you've worked with and you've just wrote, just co-authored a book with. And Alan guided me through that storm, if you will. Then, and back in 2007, 2008, we had the worldwide economic crisis. I needed another coach. In this case, I needed a different type of coach. I hired a lady by the name of Colleen Francis. Colleen Francis is the #1 sales resource on LinkedIn. I hired her to be my sales manager. Lisa, I hired someone who's going to harass me on a daily basis in terms of generating business. I deliberately did this. And it produced a result. At that time, I had a $500,000 business. I literally lost that $500,000 worth of revenues in 13 days. Starting from scratch. In the Great Depression of our lifetime, a year later, I did $293,000 worth of business with her help. And then now COVID. COVID was a completely different animal. It was a completely different monster, if you will. And I knew that I did not have, I couldn't think my way out of this. And I had been following you, we met in Florida. Like you said, you followed me. And actually, I started following you after that because I loved your talk. I signed up for your newsletter. I got your book. I start, watching the things that you posted and you published. And literally when COVID hit, I said to myself, I need a business coach. I don't need a presentation coach. I need someone who has business acumen, and you were the person. And we initially had conversations, and we've been working together for close to 2 years now, or a little bit over 2 years now.
Yeah. About to go into our third year. So
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting, Ed, because you are zigging when everybody else is zagging. So most people look at things like 9/11 and the economic meltdown in 2008 and COVID, and they have a scarcity mindset. They retract and they go, oh, I shouldn't spend money. But you do the exact opposite. You lean into it and go, okay, if I'm going to weather this storm, I need help. Where did you get the mindset from?
Well, having Alan is, he helped me with my mindset. All my coaches have helped me with my mindset. And to be perfectly honest with you, I am a person who has had historically a scarcity mindset, if you will. But the other thing I've noticed by successful people, they grieve later. They say next first, and they grieve later. And what I mean by that is they said, okay, this has happened. What am I going to do about this? I will grieve later. I will worry later. I'll be scared later. Or if I'm scared, I'm going to do it scared. That's their mindset. And that's the thing I've noticed about successful people. You're that way. You're wired that way. Colleen is wired that way. Alan is wired that way. I hired Jane Atkinson and Patricia Fripp, their presentation coaches. They're wired that way. So I needed a result, and I needed someone who didn't think like the rest of the crowd. Me being worried or scared was not helpful. Especially in 2007, 2008, I had just gotten divorced. My son was going to Georgetown University. Plus, I just lost $500,000 worth of revenues. I did not have time to feel sorry for myself. I didn't have time for that. I needed answers. I needed solutions, and I needed them fast. As I mentioned earlier, I needed a quantum leap, and I needed a quantum leap in terms of my thinking, and I needed someone to hold me accountable. You are great at holding me accountable. Okay, before we continue, I got to tell you these. There's a couple stories I need to tell you about Lisa. Okay, so Lisa, one of the things that Lisa, and I'm just, full disclosure here, Lisa wants me to be out in the public square. She wants me to publish more. She wants me to specifically produce more videos. And I've got these well-rehearsed excuses. I mean, they sound great. They're awesome sounding. And then one day Lisa said, no, she says, I'm not, this coaching call is canceled unless you post something. So literally one call, she literally
and
made
you don't
me
get your
post
money
something,
back.
and I don't get my money back. Okay, I'm still going to bill you, and you're not going to get your money back. So I said, and I posted something on the fly, and I think over 3,000 people responded to that post. So I've since then I've been writing, not as consistently as she wants me to, but more than I ever have in the past. So again, that's another result I'm getting as opposed to in this coaching relationship. Now she wants me to produce more videos. And again, well-rehearsed excuses. And then again, she said, okay, that's it. This call's over with, and I'm going to bill you again. So unless you shoot a video right here, right now. So I literally had to take out my phone and on the spot. Now, in the introduction, she introduced me as the world champion of public speaking. I'm the world champion of prepared public speaking. Not impromptu, not on the fly, not off the cuff, not on the spot, prepared. And anyway, I filmed the video. Now, here's a couple things that happened because of that video. I checked this morning, it's got over 1,800 views. Again, it's on the fly, on the cuff, etc. And I had conversations with 3 clients where we had some deals, and for whatever reason, they had fizzled out. And I'm having a conversation just this Friday, and that could lead to potentially $100,000 to $150,000 opportunity. All because Lisa told me to film a video on the spot and post it. And I've discovered a couple things. Number one, it's not going to kill me. Nothing's going to kill me. I've got to overcome whatever these ghosts are, or these fears are, whatever the hell it is in my head. It's not going to kill me. I'm not going to die. And if anything, I'm helping somebody out there. Lisa has pointed out to me, I have a great deal of content. I've got a great deal of ideas, etc. And I know one of the reasons why I'm hesitant to post and things of that nature. I had third grade in school, I had a substitute teacher who just told me I was an awful writer. She said that in front of the entire class. I'm the new kid, and I had been to this new school for 2 or 3 days. And, I just constantly relive that situation. Well, the past doesn't equal the future. And I just need to let that go and just move on.
You need to go back and tell that kid that he's okay and she was wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ed, this has been great. Thank you so much for sharing with everyone. And, I want to acknowledge you for how you shared, because you didn't actually answer any of my questions straight up. You answered every single one of them using a story and an example. And that is what a masterful speaker does. They don't teach in bullet points. They teach in stories that people can resonate and remember. So I really appreciate that. Even on this podcast, you were able to demonstrate your talent in terms of how you showed up and had conversation with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I enjoyed being here.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to this episode of She Talks Business. You can find Ed at edtate.com. And I'm just double checking that to make sure that I have the right
Yes.
URL there. And you can find all of the links to his LinkedIn and social media and all of that stuff in the show notes for this episode. Thank you for listening, and we will see you again next time.